Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Okay, hi, I'm Sarah. And for my co-op term in the fall 2021 semester, I was working at Environment and Climate Change Canada, remotely here in Ottawa. So for my job, I was a junior communications officer, and I was working for the Diversity, Inclusion, and Employment Equity team under the Public Affairs and Communications branch. The team was brand new when I started. Sorry. There was about 4 of us on the team, and it had only been created maybe 3 months prior to my arrival. So it was brand new. I was experiencing it for the first time with them, which was a really interesting experience to kind of have something like that starting from the ground up. It was a lot of organization to start and get the team on the same page and compile materials, because my supervisor was coming from another department. So it was a little bit of a chaotic start, but that kind of got me in it with everybody else. And I think it gave me a bit more responsibility as a student when I was starting at the same time as everyone. So the main projects that I worked on was a presentation and event for Disability Employment Awareness Month, and then planning a panel discussion and presentation for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Most of what we did was blogs and events geared towards diversity and inclusion topics. There are a series of networks at Environment. I believe there's 6 of them, including the Black Employees Network, Indigenous Employees Network, and the Persons with Disabilities Network. So we consulted a lot with them. That was a very important part of our job, and then creating products for them, helping them with their products, because they all do that on a volunteer basis while they work full-time at their jobs. So it was really supporting them to have the communications that they wanted with the limited resources that they had to complete that kind of in their spare time. So the first project was the awareness session for Disability and Accessibility 101. The first step was to collaborate with the networks, with our speakers from HR, and create documents such as the communications plan, some banners, employee email, post-event survey. This was my first time writing government documents, and it was quite a bit different from academic ones, so that was a really good experience. After that, we held separate English and French sessions over Microsoft Teams for employees at all levels to introduce the employees to disability and accessibility in Canada and in the workplace, and how we can be aware of inaccessibilities and pay attention to that. It was a really big success, I think, partly because it was a virtual event, and a lot of people are finding that it's not quite so easy to recognize and identify where there might be inaccessibilities online when you can't see people and you're not seeing them in their workplace physically. So it was kind of a different way of approaching that, like accessibility in documents and things. I learned so much that I hadn't known before just about this topic. And once that was done, we compiled the post-event survey to see what employees liked and would be interested in, because they're going to try and make this an ongoing series for Environment employees. This is an example of a slide from the presentation. So learning how to write in plain language. This was a big one for me too, coming from an academic environment. Switching over to plain language writing, it's a little bit of a shift when you're not used to doing that. So it was really cool to learn about that. The second project was an intersectional panel discussion for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Because this was our second project, they gave it to me to be the lead on. And the first thing we did was reach out to the speaker that we wanted to have, and then spoke with the networks about the intersectional panel discussion and if they would have a representative come and speak about the topics that were more relevant to them and something that they wanted to kind of inform people on. And then we went through, created the documents and went through the approvals process. And because we were hiring an outside speaker, we went through the approvals process again and again and again. And the event got pushed, I think, from December to January, and then from January to March. And it got pushed around a few times just because getting all the documents completed on time was not happening at the speed that we needed it to happen. So that was also really interesting for me to see as a student, just like the amount of time it can take to do something relatively simple, just because how many people need to see and approve it. So it hasn't happened yet, but it is going to happen. And everyone is really excited about that because there's not that many events where all the networks come together to speak on something like this. So I think it's going to be a really big event for them. This is an example of a visual that we made to have on the intranet. So the skills I acquired mainly were plain language writing, multi-level collaboration, especially virtually when everyone's meeting online and you have to collaborate that way. And then long-term project planning and organization. Because we were such a new team, everything was starting at the very beginning. So to see that develop over time and keep track of that was really cool. And I learned how to do that in an office environment. My overall impression of the placement is that it was really cool to see kind of how my degree can be used outside academia and what it looks like when you're applying those concepts in real life and real world settings and the differences, and also how different office culture is. Like, I went into office culture so blind. I had no idea what I was doing. So learning kind of about that, it was virtual, but I think like that was a huge culture shock for me. And now I feel so much more comfortable being in an environment like that. And the program really, I think, in the job search really increased opportunity and credibility of your resume when you have the university backing you up compared to my job searches of the past and present. So overall, it was a really good experience. It was a great team. And I'm really glad I got to do it. And that is my presentation.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Are there questions? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions ou commentaires or comments? Don't see anyone. Let me see the full view. I don't see any questions or comments.
Jennifer?
I have one.
Oh, Jennifer, sorry. Okay, I thought you were, sorry. Now you're hidden by the transcript. Okay. There you go. Go ahead.
I clapped first and then I raised my hand.
Okay, you were clapping. Perfect. Yeah, I was like, okay, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation, Sarah. I've done some time in government, and that's how I phrase it, is doing time. And so I guess my question for you is, you've spoken very favorably about the co-op program, which I think is an amazing program. And I know the students yesterday also had really great things to say about the program itself. I'm wondering how this experience has, and whether it has impacted what you'd like to do next when you're finished your master's degree.
Yeah, for sure. Something that definitely was revealing in my co-op is that I don't speak French, unfortunately. So there were so many meetings where I was kind of like missing bits and pieces, and it didn't really impact my work that much because I was on a lot of like high-level meetings that I was not going to be participating in. But it definitely, like, as someone who came from Manitoba federal government to Ottawa federal government, it was very different. It was a very different experience, and so I think it's definitely made me reevaluate what is possible with that limitation. But I know also that like it's a really good environment and the people were really good, and I think there's opportunity there. I just have to maybe look in the right spot. But I think I'm also learning that kind of being through this and writing blogs and teaching people basically stuff that I had learned over and over again in my degree that people had never heard of before. I really liked that training teaching aspect, and I think that's something I want to follow now, because that was the parts that felt the most like rewarding as well to me.
Thank you. Anyone else? D'autres questions? Well, thank you again. I always find it quite interesting to hear master's students present about their experience. It's one thing to read reports now and then. Oh, I think we have a question from Bellis.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Sarah. That was a great presentation. I'm just curious on the connections between Environment Canada and EDI. I was hoping you could maybe speak a bit more on that, just because when I think of like Environment Canada, I don't necessarily see those connections. So I'm hoping you can make those a bit clearer.
Yeah, I think you're talking about employment diversity and inclusion.
Yes, yeah, the department you're working.
It wasn't in internal communications, so it wasn't like going out to the public. It was kind of inside. And I think something that Environment was really trying to do when starting this is because so many of their employees are spread across Canada and very remote. Everyone's not having the same experiences. And so the goal is to really increase awareness of that, not just for the people working in offices in cities who maybe have like arts degrees and that kind of thing and who've been exposed to it before, but all the people working in remote areas and different fields, and kind of bringing people to a same level of kind of understanding and supporting employees. Because when you go across Canada, like I worked for parks for a long time, there's so many different like experiences and so little connection sometimes between employees. So I think their goal was really to connect employees that way, and also try to show their employees that they really are trying, and not just through like kind of your basic like blogs and topics, but by saying like the events that are important to you and uncomfortable, like we will do events on those things. We made this team so that you can communicate on those things. And there was an event that made the news in Ottawa because people were pretty mad that Environment was doing an event like that. It was about drag, I think. So basically just trying to show like the things that matter to you we'll talk about, even though people might not like it. And so that was interesting to see because there was so little trust, I think. Like the people who wanted these events happening, like believing that a government department was going to do it for them the way they wanted it to be done. There was so much pushback because people didn't really believe we were going to do it, because we were also a new team. So I think as the events started to happen, there's been like a bit more trust. And so we'll see kind of, I guess, how that unfolds in the future over a long term. But for now, that was the goal of the team and what we were trying to do.
Wow, yeah, sounds really good. I mean, the projects he took on too sounded really interesting too. So yeah, great work.
Thank you. Other questions? D'autres questions ou commentaires?